was born, I was named Joseph Nolan Ryan, after the famous pitcher Nolan Ryan, because my father had expectations that I would become a star pitcher. The first memory I have is when I was 5 years old, and I was at a daycare center, and I can remember at that time that while most other boys played only with other boys, I played exclusively with girls. And I've come to see that really as significant later on because from the earliest ages I can remember, I had a very heavy cross-gender identification, and I really identified with the girls. My male classmates started to notice, and they started to pick on me about it. So from my earliest memories, I was always the other, targeted by my other classmates and called a sissy and a mama's boy and a girl. I think back then the worst thing you could call a boy was a girl, basically, because most of the other boys really kind of disdained the girls, and I was part of that, basically, because they sensed early on that I simply did not belong to their tribe in a really tangible way. I felt a tremendous amount of loneliness. It was interesting, too, because the girls always didn't accept me either, because they also saw me as other. Because even though I liked to play with them, I wasn't a genetic female. I was not a female, so I was other with them also. So it became really complicated, and many times I would just sit up against the brick of the school for the recess all by myself. And it really proved to be sort of a model for my life, this sense of loneliness and this sense of not belonging to a social system, being an outsider.
People tend to focus on male or female without much possibility for something in between, because again it's a lot easier to think in terms of socially constructed categories that are generally accepted. To me, transgender means cutting across traditional gender categories. So you might be talking about transgender in the sense of behaviors, sense of self, attitudes, but for me, essentially, I think that it's the notion of cutting across the socially constructed categories of male and female or masculine or feminine in our society.
Transgendered is an umbrella term which includes cross-dressers, drag queens, drag kings, transsexuals, transvestites, and even people that just have a different gender identity than is commonly accepted in our society today.
What is a woman? What is a woman? Who is a woman? Who defines what a woman is? It brings us back to the stereotypes. Is it biology? Is it roles that society and culture designate that we have to behave by? A particular standard of behavior? Or is it a way of being, a way of thinking, a way of feeling?
Like, I consider myself a genetic female, always have been, probably always will be, but transgendered people, they may have a body of a man, but that's not how they feel inside. Or, they may have a body of a woman, and but they may feel like a man, spiritually, emotionally.
And for those of us who are transgendered, what we find very early on is that we do not fit into those nice little neat categories of the patriarchal society, that we are somewhere in between this bipolar system, or perhaps outside of it altogether. And so we really have to negotiate our identities in a structure which has no place for us. There were many times when I would think about suicide, and I guess the thing that helped me not to do it, the thing that was my saving grace, was my hope for a better future. There was a seed planted inside me that said, it's not your fault. Even though everyone was telling me it was, for some reason I knew that all of this stuff in society couldn't be my fault. It couldn't all be my doing. It was there for a very long time before I ever even came into being. And I've come to realize it's probably going to be here for a lot longer too. But that through speaking up, I can use my life in service of my vision, which is to radically change the way we think about gender and sexuality. And it's only one of many things wrong with our society, but I think that we each have visions that we have to carry out, and I feel like I'm a warrior for this cause.
I think that for most of us, being a male or being a female in the society is so complicated, and interacting with other males and females in society, that thinking about the possibility of there being much more complexity than that may well be, just overwhelming to people. But I think, again, lack of willingness to sort of open up to difference, to new possibilities, it is something that can be addressed through education and information. So I'm optimistic. I don't think that this is something that will not change.
I really see gender as a social construction. I believe that while people are born biologically male, female, or intersex, which is the hermaphroditic person, gender is something that is totally different. I think people think that sex and gender are the same thing, and they really use the terms synonymously. And I'm saying they're not the same thing at all. That while you can be one physical sex, that implies nothing about your gender. But gender, which is psychological, which is sociological, which is intellectual and spiritual, and all these other sort of abstract things, it's much more far-encompassing and much more mysterious than what you have between your legs. And so to sort of say that what you have between your legs is going to decide how you are and how you think and look is really kind of ridiculous and kind of short-sighted. I think for too long in our society, gender has been an either-or, black or white proposition, and human diversity simply does not support that paradigm. We are a rainbow of genders, and I think that's the way we should be looking at it, to place sexuality and gender on a continuum where you can fall between those polar opposites, male and female, and you don't have to live up to those two extremes.
When Joe and I go out, like, I notice a lot of people stare, and I think we always joke that we're a motley crew anyway, because, she calls herself this 6'6" drag queen, and I'm this, black woman with an attitude. So we just like walk down the street, and we're, and we're like the last two people would pair us together. So it's kind of like, we'll be together, and a lot of people stare at her because she's so tall, or they can't determine what her gender is, or they'll look at me because I'm black. And
I find that people who view me as male are much crueler towards me and have much less tolerance for me, because if they view me as male, they view me as the effeminate male, and that's not okay. As I've said, you have to be masculine if you're male, or at least not as overtly effeminate as I am. So they have less patience with me, they're more uncomfortable. But I find that the times that I pass as female or as a woman, people are really much kinder, because to them, I'm more congruent. I'm more whole, more harmonious as a female.
I think people get uncomfortable with bisexuality, multiracial, people who are, multi or biracial, and people who are transgender. It's because it totally redefines, or it forces society, whether they like it or not, it forces society to redefine their set values of what is black, what is white, what is male, what is female, what is gay, and what is straight. And it's kind of like, in this culture, you're always forced to be one or the other, do one thing or another.
I think that we just really need to realize that the homophobia that is out there is so against all of us. I mean, transgender people, bisexuals, gays and lesbians, I mean, we all face what you could call homophobia. And it's just that, someone doesn't care what you are. I mean, they don't care which group you belong to. They just know that you're not heterosexual and you don't fit the norm, and that you don't you don't fit the mold that they're in.
There are definitely benefits to having our community members coming out of the closet and visualizing themselves in our society, because by doing this they can show everyone in society, including teenagers that are thinking about their gender or sexual identity and older people that are thinking about their sexual and gender identity, to see that we are everywhere.
Our own patriarchal Eurocentric tradition is not the way it has always been throughout history. Other traditions show vastly different ways of organizing around gender and sexuality. And what we find is that one of the prime examples of a gender as a continuum is the Indian Bradash. And in Native American societies, they had a third gender or fourth gender possibility that existed, and it was an institutionalized role. And very often the Bradash people served special roles in their communities. They served as shamans, as medicine people, as spiritual counselors. They did childcare. They did a whole vast rainbow of wonderful work for their communities. And they were respected for the unique position they had as being neither man nor woman. And we find that this transgender role is really cross-cultural and trans-historical. Throughout all of history and across every culture, there are transgendered people. The only thing that differs is the way the prevailing society has dealt with the transgendered person. And it can be like the Native American Bradash, where we are honored and respected and cherished for the unique gifts we bring into the world, or it can be like 20th century patriarchal America, where we are routinely abused on the street, put down, beat up with baseball bats, and even killed in many instances because of who we are.
From knowing Joe, I've learned that there's so much more diversity to human beings. There really is a whole spectrum as far as our human sexuality goes. And we can't just be limited to one place on that spectrum. People change. I think that we all change over time. But I feel that my life is so much richer from knowing Jo, from having her in my life. And I feel that people who don't make room for different people, for other people, really lose a lot.
I think the other thing would be, I guess on a deeper level, as you embrace that difference, also see that that difference is not the only part of that person. That someone who's transgendered doesn't only think about being transgender 24 hours a day. They have other things that they think about, they have other interests, they have other things that they like to do with their time, and really try to see that person as a whole human being.
I think probably the best thing that you can do if you don't really know what transgendered means is really, I mean, if you have the opportunity, talk to someone who's transgendered. I mean that's how I learned everything I know about transgendered is by sitting down and talking to Jo. And, you know, when I have trouble with the issues or when I don't understand the issues, I mean, I ask her.
She really gives me inspiration. When I think that I've got it rough, I think, well, you know, look what Jo encounters with insensitive, ignorant people every day. And I think in large part that's what it is ignorance. That until you've met a transgendered individual and you get to know them, it's an idea. It's an abstract concept. When you really meet somebody, they become flesh and blood, you get to know them on a human basis, then they're real. And Yeah, I think that's what it's about.
And I think that I've tried to tap into my spirituality and find some of the answers that I need and the faith that I need to get through it. Because I think to be transgendered, you really require a leap of faith, because so much of what you see around you does not include you, it does not honor you in any way. So you have to believe that the future will honor you, and that you will play a part in creating that future for others, if not yourself.
And I think Jo is a reminder of the fact that we each have the potential for a rainbow of emotion and feeling and experience within us. And she's a reminder that we are her and she is us.